Alright, it's time to talk about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. This is my review of the film. I'll do a little bit of spoiler talk at the end. And before we even get to the film, I feel like I should give you some of my background on the source material of this film and also my anticipation for the film before we get to my thoughts on the film itself. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I don't talk about it that much on the channel, I guess. I mean, I did my whole Harry Potter Odyssey review series, but I must be the world's biggest Harry Potter fan who doesn't outwardly show it that much. You know, I don't go online and sort myself into like all the houses of Hogwarts and things like that and dress up and have tattoos, all that kind of thing, but I am a huge Harry Potter fan, and it mainly is the books. And I love the films, but the books are really special to me. You know, I literally grew up with the character of Harry. I was 11 years old when I read the first book when he was 11. I was 19 when the last book came out and he was 17. So I felt like I went on that journey with not just Harry, but Ron, Hermione, all the characters, and it's a really special series to me. It's my favourite book series of all time. It's my favourite story of all time. I think I can even say that. You know, as much as I love things like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, you know, I just feel like there's so much depth to the story, and I'm such a big fan of it. So I don't know why I wasn't that excited for Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. You know, when it was announced, I was like, you know, alright, you know, I just wasn't that into the idea of having another story told within that universe from J.K. Rowling, set in the 1920s in New York City. It just didn't feel like Harry Potter, you know. It has to have that British flavour to it, you know. For me, it felt like it needed that to work and feel like it was in that universe. But of course, in that universe, there would be America and there would be that side of it as well. So it was what it was. I just wasn't really that into the idea of it, as I've already said. So I'll stop treading water on that point and say that when the trailers came out, they didn't do too much for me. Looks fun, looks exciting, looks like a good kind of, you know, action adventure romp, but it didn't really move me. You know, it just didn't really do much for me. So we went to see it on Sunday, and it was almost out of this blind kind of brand loyalty. You know, just right, let's just go see it. It's kind of a new Harry Potter film. Let's go see it. And one of my main criticisms of the film, first two seconds I should say of the film, I turned to Connie and I went, really? And I couldn't believe what they did with the beginning of this film, and I did not like it at all. I still don't like it now. Dun 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 dun. I was like, come on, you don't, like, this isn't a Harry Potter film. It's within that universe. I know why they did it. They put that little cue there in the beginning to let the audience know when they sit down in that theatre, they're getting excited about going back to this world again, and it was to let them know, you're back in this world again. Welcome home. You know, I get it, I understand it, but to that point, it's almost like pulling the curtain back. It's a fourth wall break. It's a little bit too on the nose for me. For me, I just felt like the way this film had to work was that it had to be its own thing. Even though it's set within the same universe as Harry Potter, it needed to be its own thing. Now, they had the Warner Brothers logo, and you zoom through it just like the Harry Potter films. You had the logo that looks just like the Harry Potter one. That's fine. That connective thread works for me. But when you bring the Harry Potter theme into a film that doesn't have Harry Potter, in a world where Harry Potter doesn't even exist, in a world where probably his father, James Potter, and his mother, Lily Potter, don't even exist at this point in the timeline, why are we getting the Harry Potter theme? You know, to me it just feels too linked to those movies that to bring it in for Fantastic Beasts just felt a little bit too heavy-handed for me. And they use it again later on in the film in a really random moment that didn't seem to serve too much of a dramatic purpose either. So I don't know why they did that, you know. Well, I know why they did that, but I just wasn't a fan of it. But then I loved it. Then the film started and we had this incredible title sequence with loads of like newspaper kind of headlines and stuff, and it was like the Dark Wizard Grindelwald, and I was like, oh my god, of course, Grindelwald. Like of course this is set in the 1920s when, you know, the second biggest Dark Wizard of all time in the Harry Potter universe after Voldemort would have been, you know, at large. And so that was like, oh my god, yeah, that's, you know, I just got so into it. I got taken away with it. I got spirited away with it. And I loved it. I really did. I thought it was a great film, and it really surprised me. Probably because my expectations were pretty low. Now, to stick on the music thing, because it's a criticism I have, is not just the Harry Potter cue, but later on, in a very kind of important moment of the film, there was a theme that kind of came up that felt to me very similar to the Saw theme from the series of Saw films, the horror movies. and it felt like it was the Saw theme with a few notes changed. And then later on again we had this other moment which was more kind of sentimental and kind of wistful, and the score that came in felt to me just like Edward Scissorhands, and even Connie said that she felt that as well, just with a few of the notes changed. Now James Newton Howard, I believe, was the composer for this, a great composer. You know, he's done some great scores, but I just felt like there was too many little things that felt similar to other movies, and I just wasn't a fan of it. But the rest of the score, which didn't sound like anything else, was very good. The highlight, I think, was when the characters in the film go to what's the equivalent of the American Ministry of Magic, which is inside this New York kind of skyscraper, and you look up and you can see like the whole, like the great kind of sense of grandeur to it, and the music was perfect to that. It reminded me actually of the scene in The Order of the Phoenix when we go to the Ministry of Magic. The music just seemed to really facilitate the spectacle of entering that kind of that large kind of space that's occupied by all this magic and wizardry and witchcraft and all that kind of stuff. So the story itself, we have Newt Scamander, played by Eddie Redmayne. I have an interesting history of Eddie Redmayne. I don't mean that we went to school together or anything. I mean that I'll see him in films and it's always completely different. The Theory of Everything, I thought, like, I'm not watching a performance, I'm watching Stephen Hawking. I thought that his performance in that film was absolutely incredible, to the point where it didn't even feel like a performance to me. Then you look at Jupiter Ascending, possibly one of the worst screen performances I've ever seen in a film. And then you look at The Danish Girl, where I found his performance quite grating, until he started becoming this woman. And I thought that his performance was absolutely stunning when he made that transition. I thought he was wonderful. But yeah, so I was very, like, I didn't know what to think of Eddie Redmayne being in this film, and I didn't know whether I would gel with his character, and, you know, him having the kind of way that he talks, like, it's always like he's struggling to breathe when he's talking, and never really looks people in the eye, and I could see that it might be a bit grating to some people, and I thought that was going to drive me nuts. But I tell you what, it really worked for the character, and I love that Newt Scamander was very much unlike a Harry Potter, you know. And again, we're in the Harry Potter universe, but instead of seeing school kids growing up, we're with adults. So there is a more mature feeling to it already, and it already sets itself apart from the Harry Potter films, in that we're focusing purely on adults, which I really liked. Although there's one character who's kind of a boy, but still, I like that. I like this different kind of feel to it. It felt like it was in the same world, but it was completely different at the same time, and I like that a lot. But Newt Scamander is a character who collects these magical beasts and studies them, and tries to learn about them, and wants to kind of seek to inform the wizarding world of their importance, and he wants to protect them. And that's kind of his job, and he's writing this book called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which of course in the Harry Potter universe is the textbook that Harry has to buy, or one of the many textbooks that Harry has to buy when he goes to Hogwarts. So we know of the character of Newt Scamander, but now we get to see the guy himself, who we didn't know anything about in terms of character. And what Eddie Redmayne brings to it is this weird kind of introverted awkwardness that I really enjoyed, because it is not your typical leading character in a blockbuster movie. You know, I mean, you know, when it comes down to the action and stuff, which usually involves these beasts, and he knows what he's doing, so he can take action and he knows what he's doing. But at the same time, there are moments where he faces some real threat, and he does get his ass kicked a little bit, which I really enjoyed. And he's not good with people, and he is awkward, and it's almost hard to crack into his character and like him almost. It's hard to, but I like that about it. I like that he was an untypical leading character for the film. And the film begins with him coming into New York. I realize this is a very long video. You're just going to have to deal with it, I'm sorry. Because I really want to talk about this. And I wasn't expecting to. I wasn't even expecting to make a video about this. But here we are. We're talking about it. You're listening to me. Let's continue. Newt Scamander arrives in New York City. And he's there from the UK. He's a British character. And there's a reason he's come to New York, which becomes clear later on. But he arrives, and he has a magical suitcase where he keeps all of his beasts. It's kind of like almost like a Mary Poppins kind of thing. Or Hermione's bag in The Deathly Hallows is another example of that. But he's got all these beasts in his suitcase, and he bumps into this Muggle, or as they call them in America, No-Maj. I like that. We got to kind of see some of the terminology in America that the wizarding world uses. I like that there were differences and things like that. It's a new world to become acquainted with in the Harry Potter universe. And And so his luggage gets switched with this nomad called Jacob Kowalski, played by Dan Fogler, who I'm such a big fan of. I've loved that guy for years. I think he's hilarious, and I'm so happy and thrilled that the world is now going to get to see his huge talent. And I tweeted that to him, and he replied saying thanks, which was really cool, because I have been a big fan of him for many years. Films like Fanboys, another great one he's in is a film called Scenic Route, which I'm sure you've never heard of, but it's a fantastic film, and he's brilliant in it. And he stole the show for me. Really, he was my favourite thing about the whole film. Everyone was laughing at all of the moments where he had to bring the comic relief as this nomad who had been brought into the wizarding world and kind of carried along on the adventure that Newt Scamander goes on. Because once Harry... Is it Harry? No, Jacob. Jacob Kowalski. Harry Potter. No, Jacob Kowalski, he accidentally takes Newt's suitcase, and so the creatures escape, and that's kind of the story of the film, as Newt has to go around the city and to retrieve these beasts before they you know... start wreaking, you know, irreparable damage on the city. But that's kind of one side of the film, which in of itself is a nice kind of, as I said, looking at the trailers, a fun old action-adventure romp. But you have this other side of the film with Colin Farrell's character, who works for the, again, the equivalent of the American Ministry of Magic. And I liked how it didn't really hold your hand too much with a lot of the details. And again, I might have just missed stuff, but I wasn't sure what they called themselves. I think it was mentioned a few times, but I've forgotten. But either way, Colin Farrell plays his character, Graves, I think it was. And he's a very mysterious kind of suave character with a bit of darkness to him. And he has this backstory, not backstory, side story in the film with this young boy called Credence, played by Ezra Miller, who gave a really affecting, haunting performance, I thought. He just looked so weird, from the haircut to the way that he held himself, and I was really uncomfortable watching him, and I guess that's the point. But by the end of his kind of story in the film, I just thought that his performance was stellar. Really, really good, and then his story with Colin Farrell's character was central to this second part of the story, which is very dark compared to the lighter tone of Newt and his friends going off and collecting the magical beasts, of which there are two other characters. One called Tina, played by Catherine Waterston, I believe, or Waterston, something like that. And she was great as this ex-Aura who'd been demoted. She's struggling with her career, and she comes across Newt Scamander, and she tries to arrest him, doesn't go very well. And she ends up kind of coming along for the ride and brings her sister along, who's another fun character. And so you have, you know, these two women, and then you have Newt Scamander and the nomad, the muggle, Harry Kowalski, going off on this fun adventure around New York City, and I loved it. I loved the feel of the adventure. I love the darkness of the darker toned scenes with Colin Farrell and Ezra Miller and Samantha Morton, who played a very devilish kind of character. I thought was a very good kind of almost shades of Umbridge from the Harry Potter series. This woman who is stoutly against all wizarding and witchcraft and stuff, and she campaigns against the wizarding world, and that plays into it. But I love the film, I really did. I loved all the creatures, you know, and a lot of people are talking about how, oh yeah, it's David Yates directing this film, the guy who did the last 4 Harry Potter films, of which I think the last 3 are just incredible. He really nailed those last 3 Harry Potter films as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, it's great that he's back, and there's that, again, connective thread through the Harry Potter universe on the big screen. And then people are talking about how J.K. Rowling wrote the script for the first time. She didn't write any of the Harry Potter films, and it really does feel like a J.K. Rowling penned story. The dialogue, the characters, the way that there is a mystery in the central mystery in the story that gets revealed and then unraveled, and a big reveal at the end. It was so great to kind of be experiencing a J.K. Rowling story again. I think that the way she plots things is just superb, and it really worked well in this. And I'm glad that she was able to kind of teach herself, as she said, to write a screenplay for this. And I'm really excited for the future of the series, which I'll talk about at the end of the video. But people haven't really mentioned that also, you know, we're getting back the same editor, Mark Day, who edited the last 4 Harry Potter films. We're getting back Stuart Craig as the head of production design, who did the production design on all the Harry Potter films. The genius that is Stuart Craig. Just the way that he has designed everything that you see in this film, and you know, the creatures, the sets, you know, they did a fantastic job filming this in Leavesden in the UK and making it feel like New York, and obviously a lot of digital imagery, and maybe a bit too much digital imagery. I thought there was a lot of it on screen, and I'm not usually a big fan of that, but I have to say most of the CGI was phenomenal. We had a fun little CGI performance from Ron Perlman as this goblin in like a kind of a secret kind of roaring 20s New York kind of bar, which was really cool. I loved that scene. And I love the feeling of the 20s as well. It was cool to kind of have something I love so much, which is the magic of the Harry Potter world, but to put it into a city as kind of romantic and kind of movie-esque as New York, but again in that very, to me, idealized kind of nostalgia drenched period of the 1920s, that period that I love so much, and to see that was really cool. And yeah, what else can I really say? I loved it. I really did. I thought it was a really, really good film. Really entertaining. It had that more mature edge to it, but it still had the funny moments. And I didn't go into Dan Fogler. I kind of got off track. But yeah, his character of Jacob Kowalski, I thought was a character that would probably be extremely hard to pull off, because he has to shoulder pretty much most of the comic relief of the film. A couple of really emotional moments as well, but also he has to deliver or kind of facilitate a lot of the exposition in terms of letting us know what's going on. You know, Newt Scamander will keep telling Kowalski what's going on, and Kowalski has to kind of react to everything and say, so what does this and what's that and all that kind of thing. But he does it so likably and believably, and he just really, I think, I mean, I don't think his character is key to the film by any means, but he was my favourite part of it, because it's really hard to make simple humour work, I think. But he really showed in this film that you don't need to go crude and crass with it to really make people laugh and to give them a good time. And I think that Dan Fogler nailed it in this film, and he was fantastic. And the actress who played Tina in the film, I thought was brilliant as well. I loved her character, and her sister as well. She was a lot of fun. A character I think could have been very annoying, but ended up really working for me as well. And that's the best thing about Harry Potter, is the characters. Well, no, I guess it's the characters and the great plots that J.K. Rowling comes up with, but the characters are still what make you love the stories. And, you know, she nailed it, the actors nailed it, and we have another group of great characters to move forward with a few more films, and I couldn't be happier with the future of this series, and I'm really excited for the next one. I'm really excited for the next 4 ones. I mean, when I heard that there was going to be a trilogy, it's going to be a trilogy, and then they said, oh no, it's going to be 5 films, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, guys, calm down with the multiple films, this Avatar syndrome, for, you know, just for fuck's sake, just chill out for a second and see how the first one does, yeah? But then I kind of read, and I'm glad that I waited to do this review until today, because yesterday J.K. Rowling was tweeting about the film and answering questions from fans, and she said that initially, you know, the trilogy announcement was a placeholder, and so she plotted out the whole story as she wanted to tell it. And she said to Warner Brothers, no, I think this is 5 films. I think this needs to be 5 films. And that's exactly what she did with the Harry Potter series. She worked it out and she said, right, this needs to be 7 books. That's how the story gets told. And look how that turned out. You know, so for me, knowing from the horse's mouth, not to call J.K. Rowling a horse by any means, but knowing directly from the source of the creator of all of this, that she believes that the story is best told over 5 films, I'm all for it, and it completely washes away any skepticism I had over this being a franchise, because I loved this initial film and I really didn't expect to. So there you go, there's my thoughts on Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Thank you very much for watching. I will now get into a little bit of spoiler talk if you haven't seen the film, because to really express how much I love this film, I need to talk about the ending, because it is absolutely key to my enjoyment of it, I think. Well, maybe not absolutely key, but it's something that pushed it over the edge, I think. So yeah, if you haven't seen the film yet, go check it out. You know, a lot of people have been kind of down on it, which is fine. You know, you can have your opinion, and we all react to things differently. But like I said, I was almost as skeptical as anyone going into this. And I should mention this before I get to the spoiler talk, actually, because I really want to talk about this for anyone who's watching this right now. I got home from Fantastic Beasts, and the mood just struck me. I don't do this often, mostly because you never really get a response, but I tweeted to J.K. Rowling, and I said that, I said thank you for Beasts. I was skeptical going into it, but I ended up adoring it, and the ending gave me a moment that I live to be thrilled by. So exciting. And I tweeted it, and then I was scrolling through Twitter, and this little heart-shaped icon appeared at the top of my phone screen. I thought, oh, one of my friends has liked it or something. And I pulled it down, and it said, J.K. Rowling likes your tweet. And I was like, what? And then I double-checked to see, is it the J.K. Rowling? Because you have all these fan accounts. And it was the J.K. Rowling, who is my favourite author, and kind of wrote the stories that kind of defined my childhood and my teenage years. And it was incredible. It really was incredible. And during this period now where I'm writing my own book, and have been trying to write my own book for 20 years, and she is an author who has inspired me so much in terms of writing, the way that she creates characters and sets the mood and describes things and plots things. And so, you know, just from that aspect, as my favourite author, to have seen something that I've said to her, and for her to kind of appreciate that and acknowledge that to me, almost privately, with just a like. I often find that more intimate than retweeting it to people. It's like, you know, yes, you know, thank you for that. She doesn't need to physically reply thank you. She just needs to click on it and say, you know, that's cool, thank you. And that was just the biggest thrill for me, and it was really, really cool. And I meant every word as well. So let's talk about the ending. Spoiler warning, you've been warned. At the end of the film, and throughout the film, we saw two little glimpses of this little pendant that Graves, Colin Farrell's character, gave to Credence, Ezra Miller's character. And it was the Deathly Hallows symbol. And again, as a Harry Potter fan, I was getting all excited, like, ooh, it's the Deathly Hallows. That must mean that Grindelwald is behind this, and that Colin Farrell's character is a disciple of Grindelwald, because I know how much the character of Gellert Grindelwald is obsessed with the Deathly Hallows. You know, him and Dumbledore grew up as kids obsessing over the Deathly Hallows, and how the wizarding world should be the dominant world, and they should rule over the Muggles and stuff like that. And then Dumbledore kind of separated from that somewhat, and you know, that is just such an intriguing story to me. And Grindelwald is one of my favourite characters because he is so shrouded in mystery, and because of the tragedy with Dumbledore's sister. I love all of that stuff, and how it was unravelled in the final book was incredible. My favourite part of that, I think, next to the kind of the Harry and the Horcruxes and things like that. Anyway, the film draws to its conclusion. Colin Farrell gets cornered by, you know, the American auras, and I suddenly thought, this is where Grindelwald is going to turn up. He's going to turn up, and it's going to be this big reveal, and he's going to help Colin Farrell escape, and we'll see him in the next movie. And then Eddie Redmayne uses one of his Fantastic Beasts to stop Colin Farrell, and then suddenly his face begins to change. And I tell you what, like, no exaggeration, it was one of the best cinema experiences I have ever had. And I would never have expected it. I would have never expected it. Going into Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, walking into that cinema screen, I was expecting a good, enjoyable film that probably wasn't the best, and then it would be kind of nice to go back to that universe with all the magic and stuff of the Harry Potter world. But I never would have guessed that in a couple of hours' time I would be experiencing one of the best cinema-going experiences of my life. Because I was a huge fan of the Harry Potter story, of the character of Grindelwald, to see this transformation, and there's Johnny Depp. Now, one thing I love how Colin Farrell's character was Grindelwald all along and was disguising himself. And the clues are there, you know, the Deathly Hallows symbol, his haircut, we get a very good close-up of the back of Colin Farrell's head, and we see a close-up of the back of Grindelwald's head at the beginning of the film, so the clues are there. And it's so simple when you think about it. I don't know why I never saw it coming, and that's the beauty of it, is that it was the simple play that worked out. And there's Johnny Depp, and I tell you what, as the face was morphing and I realised that Colin Farrell's character was Grindelwald and that he was there in that room with them, it sent a shiver up my spine, and I literally couldn't help myself. I never do this. I never vocalise things in the cinema. I literally went, oh my, what? You know, and I heard myself over everyone. And as soon as I said it, I heard a few other people kind of going, oh, like that. And there he was, and then they say Grindelwald, and I was just like, oh my god, and it was Johnny Depp. Now I have to say, I heard that Johnny Depp was going to be playing Grindelwald, but I thought that wasn't until the second film. And when I heard it, I groaned. I thought, oh god, Johnny Depp, what are they doing? Like, it's stunt casting, you know, he's going to have a crazy wig. I'm thinking Willy Wonka kind of crazy. He's going to overdo it. He's not going to fit the sensibility of a character like Grindelwald, who has such a complex history. And then we saw him in the film. And he had that weird hair, and well, it wasn't too weird, but you know, it was different. And then I loved it. I love the look. I love the way he performed it. And I know that Brian Lomax, I don't know if you're going to watch this video, man, it's so long, but he talked about how he thought this deflated the whole film for him. It's so interesting how these things affect us, and how this thing made the whole film for me and kind of almost ruined it for him. It's really interesting, but also he said that he felt like it was just Johnny Depp being Johnny Depp, and that kind of contrasted and conflicted with the way that Colin Farrell had performed the character of Graves. I agree with that, but to me, it feels like Grindelwald was kind of embodying this character who he was masquerading as, because, as it said at the beginning of the film, you know, Grindelwald is like a wanted man. Where is Grindelwald? This big, you know, campaign, this dark wizard. Where is he? People are trying to find him, and so he's hiding in plain sight. And he's acting differently, and I feel like as soon as he was revealed, he didn't have to keep up that pretense, and he could be his unhinged self. You know, he's mental. You know, he really is, and that's why the big thing happened with Dumbledore, and they split off, because it was just too much power, too much of this horrible mindset of we need to be the dominant force in the world, and we need to put the Muggles underneath our boot, kind of thing. So yeah, and obviously, and you know, Johnny Depp's in the film for like what, 20 seconds, and I thought he made an impact. I can't wait to see him in the next film. And just again, I was so skeptical of it, but as soon as I saw it, I just felt like cheering. I really did, and it was such a great movie moment. And while we're here, you know, not that it's spoiling anything, but another criticism I could level at the film is that it feels like there was about 6 different endings. It was a bit like the Return of the King syndrome, but on a slightly smaller scale, a slightly less epic scale, where all the characters get to have their moment, they get to tie everything up, and it was really dragged out, which was fine for me in this first initial viewing, because I grew to love the characters, and getting to see them have the time to breathe and have their endings play out was really nice for me. But I feel like on repeat viewings, and especially with there going to be more films in the franchise, I feel like the ending of this film is going to feel a bit beleaguered every time you watch it again. I don't think it'll hold up as well, because it gets drawn out so much. That's just another thing I could throw in there. I love the design of the beasts themselves. They were really cool, and just really funny moments with them. I loved so much of this film. And so yeah, this is a real revelation to me, a real revelation, big fan of it, and I'm really looking forward to the future installments in the series. I almost wish they were going to do a Harry Potter style and do it every year, but it's going to be 2018, then 2020, and then there's no dates for the next ones. But a really exciting thing, again, semi-spoilers here, J.K. Rowling has said that the whole story, encompassing 5 films, will take place between 1926, where the first film is set, and 1945. So you know what that means. Any Harry Potter fan out there should know what that means. It's going to end in 1945. Oh boy, it's going to be the big one. So I can't wait for that. The only thing I'm worried about now is that they cast Dumbledore correctly. So yeah, and I got a lot of thoughts on that in general with the Harry Potter film. So I could keep talking forever, and this is just you know, this turned into a much bigger video than I had planned, but yeah, it surprised me, it really did. And coming off of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child this year, which, you know, I'm not able to go and see because it's booked up for the next 35 years, but you know, bought the script book, read it, loved it. It was like being back with old friends again, but ultimately, in the back of my head, it wasn't written by J.K. Rowling. This, to me, was a little bit more special than Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. It might be different if I went to see the play, of course, but man, it was great to be back in a J.K. Rowling told story, and that to me was the highlight. And I got nothing but good things to say about it. There wasn't really that many things I could criticize. I mean, I've criticized a few things in this video, but they were very minor and didn't really impact the rest of the film. So yeah, if you want to know my rating for it, I mean, just to throw that out there, it would probably be like a 9 out of 10, you know, something like a 4.5 out of 5. You know, it didn't have the final push to go to a 10 out of 10 or anything like that. And I don't even feel like a lot of the Harry Potter films do either, as much as I love them. So it's just below that to me, but it was supremely entertaining, and it's just a shame that I'll never get that moment again of being surprised at the reveal of Grindelwald. And that's kind of the beauty of film sometimes, is that you get these lost moments that you'll never be able to go back to. You know, I will never be 2 days ago watching the film and having that, oh my god, no way moment in the cinema again. you know. So there's something nice about that it'll never be repeated, but kind of sad that I can't relive it over and over again, you know, because that really is, as I tweeted to J.K. Rowling, those are the moments I live to be thrilled by in the cinema, where I just get so excited by something or moved by something. In this case it was excitement and kind of a fanboy kind of a reaction, but that's neither here nor there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the film. I know a lot of people are down on it, and that is fine, absolutely. I think it's all down to preference, but I think we can all agree that it's a very well-made blockbuster film. One more criticism, just because I had it in my head, and I should have talked about this earlier, but it was a little busy at times. A little bit busy. A couple of the scenes were a bit too jumbled, you know, just a bit too much going on, you know, and I was kind of losing a little bit of interest in some of those scenes. So, you know, it ain't a perfect film by any means, but the pros far outweigh the cons, and I was a big fan of it. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
So you might say he's a really nice guy, really, but if fucking don't cut shit with me. He says he's really cool, but I think he's a tool.